Okay, welcome everyone to the 4D Method 4D user group. Today is October 7th of the infamous year 2020. Got a good group here. Thanks everyone for joining us. Hope you're all staying healthy and safe out there. Don't worry, 2020 is almost over. Sure, 2021 will be nothing but sunshine and kittens. So that'll be fun. Who doesn't like kittens? So on the agenda today, I'll do my usual spiel about 4D Method. We'll get some 4D news from Jim Sobczak. I'll highlight a few articles from the 4D blog. Always a wealth of great information and articles coming out on there. We'll have Tim Nevels talk to us about building your own classes in 4D, which is a really exciting new development in the 4D development world. It's definitely opening up the opportunity for great changes in the application architectures and whatnot. We'll have questions and answers, and we'll talk about our next meeting on November 18th. So my name is Brent Raymond. I organize and host the 4D user group, 4D Method 4D user group. Our website is 4dmethod.com. We can be reached at 4dmethod@gmail.com. What we're trying to do here is bring together a scattered community of developers and users all around the world. We hope everybody here, everybody can join us. No, the time doesn't work out for the entire planet, but we're doing our best. We use video conferencing, in this case Zoom, just like everybody's schools and workplaces now, to do the video, to do these meetings, and to allow everybody to participate from everywhere, not just in your neck of the woods. All of the meetings are recorded, and I believe this was meeting number 46, so that would mean that there's about 45 other recorded meetings and demos that we've done over previous years from 4D Method, and there's just a lot of great content out there. Shows a big evolution during previous years of the language, and it's a really great way to have a peek at what all the other developers are doing and what, you know, where 4D is playing a role elsewhere in the world. And yeah, so that's what we're trying to do. We're looking to provide fresh new content and exposure to 4D application users and developers everywhere. So I just wanted to take a moment to highlight one of our latest Patreon supporters at the, people in the French speakers in the call will have to correct me, but organisateur. Okay, good enough. Tiran Baruz, you may have seen some of his recent videos for 4D development. He runs Clearview Systems Limited. He's a developer of CXR currency exchange software, voted the software currency exchange software of the year for 2020. And you can now see some of his videos listed on the 4D Method website under demos and his name. You can check out the 4D Method Patreon site. There's a lot of great benefits and whatnot. One of them being having your own page with your own videos and demos and information about yourself on 4D Method. Some of his recent videos, which are just phenomenal. If you haven't seen them, it talks a lot about what we're talking about today with using classes and new development approaches in 4D. He has one on creating a simple timestamp class in 4D, and also creating a blockchain app in 4D, sort of a blockchain browser explorer, which is pretty neat to see. I mean, we've all heard of blockchain, but it's it's neat to see it done in 4D. And if you have any kind of finance applications or other uses for integrating blockchains into your apps, people have found all kinds of different uses for blockchain, from gaming to every kind of coin you can imagine. But yeah, neat to see it done in 4D, and the demos couldn't be better. So yeah, definitely check out his YouTube channel at Clearview Systems Limited. And now I'm going to kick it over to Jim for some 4D news.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Hi, everyone, and greetings from 4D. Our thanks to Brent and Ed for organizing these meetings and lining up interesting presenters. We are also looking forward to Tim's presentation on building your own classes in 4D. It's a huge topic, as Brent mentioned, the 4D community now, and we're excited to see what Tim is working on, and glad to see that he's using a V18R3 for this presentation, so that's really cool. And yeah, a shout out to Tehran. As you mentioned, Brent, his application gets written up a lot in business magazines because it's a very cool application. And every time you see an interview with Tehran about his application, he will mention the fact that it's built on 4D, and how confident he is that 4D can handle what he's trying to do. And yeah, I agree. His videos are just amazing. I'm really glad you brought him up in this meetings. Okay, a few updates from Brent. Just to reiterate from me, sorry, to reiterate Brent's point. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy and able to do your work productively. Here at 4D in Silicon Valley, we are all still working from home with occasional essential visits into the office. We feel fortunate that we're able to be productive in this environment. Santa Clara County has recently moved into Tier 3 of 4 tiers. Santa Clara County is our county in California. The way the tier structure works in California, the higher the tier, the less restrictive you are. So we're in Tier 3 now. Tier 4 means we're almost reopened back to normal levels. So we're getting closer to being able to populate our office again, just kind of sitting there and waiting for us to get back. But it seems like California is kind of headed in the right direction now. Worldwide offices, 4D offices are open with precautionary measures. That includes 4D France, 4D Germany, 4D Australia, 4D Japan, etc. So a quick business update. Q3 was very strong for us. We just wrapped that up last week, strong in the US and globally. And we're also looking forward to a strong Q4 with a lot of stuff in the pipeline for us. We're way ahead of our projections for 2020, which is really interesting and very positive for us. Projections were made at the end of last year, well before the COVID virus ever hit. And we are super happy that we are ahead of those projections so far this year. So 4D is doing really well health-wise, everyone's staying healthy and financially. And for that, we'd like to thank you, our developers, for building your businesses on 4D and continuing to do the upgrades, renew maintenance, and using our professional services team. So thanks for that. Quick note about the Summit digital experience. We're still getting a lot of visitors to our online site, the Summit Digital Experience site. The average watch time is growing. Of course, we're getting fewer visitors than when we first started, but the average watch time is growing, which is an interesting phenomenon. To me, that means that developers are revisiting topics that they're now putting into their applications. So they're watching the full Summit video. I think it's a good trend for sure. And just as a reminder, there are over 45 breakout sessions and keynotes that are on that site, on the Summit Digital Experience site, with over 40 hours of video recordings, many of which have come from you, our developers, and some of you on this call. One of the things that we mentioned in the Summit business presentation is online training and the Learning Center. So those will be a big focus for us going forward. Online training was launched last month with the first series of 6 unique online trainings. So we had many people sign up for those. Some people signed up for all 6 of them. Some of you on this call attended one or more of those trainings. We're limited in size, as you know, because we want to have a robust Q&A session after the trainings are over. So far, we're receiving excellent feedback on those. And if you haven't had a chance to attend one of the trainings, feel free to go online and sign up. I'm impressed personally with the training sessions themselves and the training team that's working. That we have a separate team doing these trainings. They're all super dedicated. They know 4D really well, and they take great pride in their presentation. So I'm hoping you're able to attend one or more of them. They're $60. I think it's a fair value for a 1 hour training. Some of them went on for 2 hours, and I think they're really good. Right now, we're working on a way to make online payment easier. Right now, we don't have it at all, actually. And we're working on a way where you can go online, register for the site, and pay at the same time. It's not that hard to do, and we're close to getting that launched. It'll make it a lot easier for you to just do everything automatically. Okay, quick note about software releases. If you're following our feature release cycle, which is the R releases, you'll notice that V18R4 will be released very soon. It's been in beta now for about 3 months. The R4 features have been presented on blog.4d.com for quite a while now, and hopefully you're following along with those. New advances in 4D Write Pro, 4D View Pro, 4D for iOS, Orta, and much more there. And a good sign is that we're seeing more and more developers, even our OEMs and large customers, taking advantage of the quarterly feature releases. So that's really great to see. In the LTS release cycle, which is a long-term support release cycle, version 18.3 was released on September 14th. Here at 4D, we've upgraded all of our internal databases to version 18.3. We've seen no issues at all. Everything is performing well. And the final point is discuss.4d.com. I know I thank you at every one of these meetings, but I'm pretty impressed with the way everyone moved their discussions from the iNug over to discuss.4d.com. And I want to thank you for that. I think there is better community support on the forum, on the discuss.4d.com site than there was on the iNug. It's certainly easier to read for me and follow. Hope you feel the same way. And you also see better support from our 4D engineering team, our QA team, and the tech support team. And of course, that's a place to put your feature requests if you're wanting to do that, and all the announcements about new releases are on there as well. And it's great to see all of you using that. Okay, Brent, I think that's it for me today. Thanks for the time, and looking forward to Tim's presentation.
Thank you, Jim.
Welcome.
Yeah, the trainings really all look very interesting, and there's so much coming out with there's so much changing in the 4D language, and that's I know that we all on this call struggle to keep up with it, and so it's good to see that there's a more formalized education being offered and more frequent basis. I think all of those trainings were within the last month, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
And we're starting the second cycle now for those 6 trainings.
Cool. Yeah. And yeah, I think we'll be seeing some V18R4 today because Tim's been able to take advantage of some of the R4 features, not just with R3. I know I mentioned R3 in the blog release, but R4 has got some really cool stuff that I'd just shout out again. In addition to the 4D Pro and 4D Write advances, as we've mentioned, Orta classes, which are an extension to the data classes. You can really build on your 4D structure and have customized classes from your tables. The crypto key class, which is really neat to see the direction that 4D is going. I think I would have to think that this is how they're going to start releasing other feature sets. So if you're interested in how 4D is going to start using classes internally in their language structure. CryptoKey is probably a very good example of how that's going to work. Again, with like, as I'm sure some of you have seen, the file and folder classes and that kind of stuff. Well, this is another step in that direction. Yeah, in R4 you get the new variable declaration syntax, which is, I'm sure for any developer, a big change. I'm very used to writing C underscore when I start using a variable. So it's going to take a little time to get used to writing it the other way, but there's a lot of good reasons why to do that, which I think we'll see a little bit of in a bit. Yeah, 4D for iOS, Pro list box features, a lot of good stuff in R4, so exciting stuff. And then talking about the blog, which again has got just really great write-ups about all the new features coming out. I don't know how many of you have had an opportunity to use Tableau yourselves, but if you are, which I'm sure most of us do, having a lot of valuable information in our databases that other business interests want to get their hands on for running reports and using for other customized views of our 4D data. Tableau is awesome for it. It's really neat. So there's a couple of recent blog articles and also a webinar that 4D did. So the blog articles were a follow-up to the webinar, but it shows the best ways to offer real-time connections to your systems from Tableau. Anytime you can offer that kind of integration with the rest of the business, it just puts a lot of good feelings out there for our systems to be able to play nicely with these other modern consumers of the data. Right, then a discussion of Apple Silicon. I know a lot of us still use Mac servers, even though I guess for a long time there was a big push towards getting better bang for your buck with Windows, but certainly some of us use Apple machines, Macs for clients and development and whatnot. And so there was a huge shift in the Mac world where they announced that new machines will use ARM chips, not these ARMs, but not Intel chips, and how 4D is reacting to that. And so they've basically said so far so good. They've already got test machines set up for running in their development environment and test environment for using Apple Silicon, and I think they've only reported minimal issues. So that's very reassuring for the larger 4D community, which I know has historically been had a lot of Mac users. And then there was another article that highlighted articles called "Extensive Library of 4D Applications Available," but there was a couple of really jazzy things that they highlighted, called one of them being a lightweight email composer. It's actually a component that you can just plop into your system and have a modern looking and functioning email functionality, email authoring functionality in your application. So it's really easy to take advantage of that. And I know most of the time we all kick people out to their own email systems for writing emails, but if nothing else, it's a great way to see how to take advantage and how to use the new email features that are available in I think the R versions, if not standard versions of 18. There's also a really neat demo for having a simple Canvas tool that uses HTML5 and Canvas, which is part of HTML5. So there's nothing, no kind of fancy plugins. It's all just a web area and HTML5, and then you can all of a sudden have a drawing environment where people can, say, mock up pictures or highlight things, or I don't know, anything that's available that might be useful for your application. But either way, this is really good examples of new features in 4D, and also links to their GitHub site pages where they have all kinds of other great examples as well. So definitely worth a browse. So onward to the our special feature here. We have Tim Nevels back again, president of Innovative Solutions. He's joining us again from Kansas. Don't let the middle of the river picture behind him fool you. Tim is very active in the 4DMethod community and has previously presented several times for the group, including one on using dynamic forms, which is a really neat feature of 4D, storing forms externally from your application and being able to manipulate them on disk. And another on how to implement a worker queue monitor by using storage for monitoring all of your workers, preemptive or otherwise. They're both very interesting demos. Definitely check them out if you missed it. They're available on the YouTube channel. And if you search on 4dmethod.com. Today Tim is here to take an early look into building your own classes in 4D. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tim. Welcome, Tim, and thanks for coming back to do another demo.
Well, thank you, Brent. Happy to be here. And I was just thinking the other day, how long I've been doing 4D development work. And I started in 1990 with version 2.0.10 on floppy disks and a Mac 512 KE with a SCSI hard drive attached, 20 megabyte hard drive. That's 30 years. And as I look at the list of participants, got 47, and I'm happy that I'm not the oldest guy in the room doing 4D work. As Steve Jobs, I saw in a YouTube video once, says, in most of the meetings I'm in, I'm the oldest guy in the room. But I see someone named Dan Wasserman is here today. So he's got just a little bit more seniority than I do, as being someone that's worked with 4D a little longer than me. Hi, Dan. Glad to see you here. So I've signed up for all of the online trainings that 4D's provided. Even though I've got all this experience, maybe I consider myself an 4D expert with the classic language. Certainly not an expert in Orta or the object language. Not an expert by any means. It's going to take some years before I would consider myself maybe an expert in that area. So I need all the help. I need all the examples, all of the bits of information I can to help me wrap my head around all the new things with classes and objects and data stores and class stores and all those different things. So I signed up for all the online trainings, and even the basics one, I thought, I'm not going to learn anything in this. I learned a bunch of things in there. Just watching people coding and doing things, because they actually write codes in these online trainings. They don't just have slides. Most of it is people banging out code on the keyboard, and you're watching it happen. Very, very useful to me. So I encourage everybody to go to the online trainings if you want to get up to speed as quick as possible. Okay, so I wanted to learn more about writing classes. And I need some way, I need some kind of a goal. I can't just start up 4D and just kind of fool around. I have to have kind of like a reason, something that I have to produce to actually motivate me to, do work. So I said, well, I got to find something to reproduce, something to make me want to use classes. And so I chose the JavaScript date class. JavaScript has got a date class, which lets you do all kinds of things to a date object. And so I'm going to go ahead and flip to screen share. And let's do that. And we'll turn that on. I don't think I want to share that in a second here. Okay, there we go. Hopefully you can see the screen. If you can't, let us know. By the way, we are not going to be holding questions until the end of the presentation. Ask questions at any time throughout the presentation. You don't have to wait. If you have comments, if you see something I'm doing wrong, or you see something you could contribute to everybody, feel free to jump in. Anyway, here is the web page that I went to for the JavaScript date class. And you can see it's got a lot of methods, a lot of functions, get date. We've got UTC related things. It's been around for a really long time. So I said, maybe I can implement a class that mimics this or duplicates this. That way I can see, okay, what do I have to do? What's the syntax? How does it work? And use that as my guide to writing something and making me use classes. So that's where this all started. I started with V18R3, then I switched to V18R4 because it's got some nice new features in it that I liked and I wanted to get exposed to. So let me start with a very simple test to show something that I just learned this week. Here is a class called Simple Test, all right? It has a constructor here, which you can pass in a value. It's just assigning a text value to the object. And here is a function that will do the same thing, set a value. And then here's another function to set a different value, a month name. Okay, so here is a method. Now you'll notice I'm using the var command up here instead of using the C_text. And that's new in R4. And that's very useful because it limits what you see when you declare a variable this way. When you type this variable and you try to do things like set value, let's do this. If I hit the tab key here, you'll notice that it only shows me the properties and functions for this. If I declared this just as an object, you wouldn't see this. So that's the big value of using var, is when you specify the class that the variable is assigned to, it goes and looks in this class method and says, all right, here's the things you can do. Okay, super useful. When you go down here to using like my 4DDate command or 4DDate class, it does the same thing, it limits it. So anyway, let's run a little simple test here and see what we got. So it's going to declare some variables. So here, this line will call the constructor. New is the same thing as function new. They call it class constructor, but when you use new, it's here. They're using overloading because every class implements new by default. You don't have to do it yourself. It's class constructor. You can have one or you can not have one. If you have one, you can do things. Well, let's go back up here so we can just step into it. We step into it real fast. You see it's dropped into this code. And you can see it's up here in simple test constructor. And we haven't passed anything in, but if we did, then we could assign a value. And this is how you assign it. You use the this command, this dot, whatever. This you could look at as $0, okay? But you can't use $0. But anyway, that's the way constructor works. So this will return back a empty object. Okay, big deal. And now if we want to run the constructor again, we can. And this time we pass in a value and it assigns a value. Oh, all makes sense, okay? So now we'll make another new one. We'll set a value and then let's get rid of these guys here. Okay, and then we can set another value and set this. Okay, now we've set two different things. Okay, all wonderful, all right? Now, let's try something else. in a lot of the order calls, you string together a bunch of functions, like query, order by, you string them all across, okay? So I decided that's good. I'm going to do that too. So when you run this code, look at that. Test 3 is not an object. It's null. What the? Didn't get an error, nothing. It just did not work. Now here we're assigning a value. Let's do that. Nope, can't do that either. The object's undefined. It's null. Oh boy. So now I'm going, whoa, why doesn't this work? Why doesn't this work? And of course, you can't string together multiple ones. Well, I posted a message on the 4D forums to say, why doesn't this work? Is this a bug? What am I doing wrong? And I immediately got an answer back from Vincent on the 4D engineering staff in France. I'll just throw it out. Does anybody know why this doesn't work?
No.
Okay. Here's why it doesn't work. That's a board. I'm not assigning anything to $0. So if I want this to work, I need to include this. This syntax is what you use for setting a value this way. That this command is like $0, okay? But if you're going to be assigning it to something, you need to use this $0 equals this. So if you don't do this, you can't do this. You can't string together multiple method calls, okay? I didn't know this. This is a new thing. So let's run this again and see how it works. Okay, so let's try this again. Now we'll come down here and we'll say here, there, test 3. Oh, look at that, worked. Now we got a value in there. And we can do this, and that still works because the object is there. And we can do this, string several method calls together or function calls together, and we get that. So there's a little tip for you, something that I just found out this week. I'm still learning, as you say, it's all new, a lot of these things. So there, now I want to bring it out first because that's something new and something you may run into. And as you're designing your classes, and how you write code, this may be what you end up doing a lot. You do, instantiate, make an object, and then you set the value. But you may end up wanting to do things like this where you call things multiple times, or you do something like this, set value, dot set month. You may want to do something like this where you call multiple functions in a row. And you're passing along the way. So each call passes the changed object to the next call, which changes it and passes it to the next one. In order for that to work, you've got to assign this to $0. Okay.
That is a good tip.
All right, that's a new one. Like I said, just found out about it. I wish you didn't have to.
Yeah.
I wish 4D would just make it happen, and maybe they will, or maybe there's a reason why it's done that way now. But anyway, that's the tip in R4. If you want to do these kind of things, that's how you do it. Okay. Now, let's switch over to the interesting part. So here is the date class. And I'll go ahead and expand all. Okay, and I've got a constructor here. And the JavaScript date class, its constructor, has a lot of possibilities. You can pass in no parameters. You can pass in a bunch of numeric values. You can pass in a text value. So there's a lot of different ways. And so this is a perfect use of the variant parameter type, okay? And so that's what I'm going to use because it's perfect use for it. You don't pass pointers, you pass in a variant. And then you decide what the parameter is to know what to do. You'll notice also that here for these variables, the local date variable, you use the date 4D command. This is now not only a command, but it's kind of a keyword. Same as time. Time is a command, and now time is also a keyword. Long integer doesn't exist. If you use var, you got to say integer. It's really a long integer, but it's integer. Odd. Okay. Also, var here is the only keyword 4D's ever created that starts with a lowercase letter. Everything else starts with uppercase, as you notice. Everything, but not var. Don't know why. Seems odd. I would expect that at some point someone's going to complain about that and say, let's make this a capital V so it matches everything else. But right now, it's lowercase. I don't know why. Okay, so anyway.
For anyone that's not seen variant before, variant is a new variable type, just like integer and time and date, except it assumes the type of whatever that you set it to during runtime, even compiled. So it's extremely flexible.
Yeah, and you can still use the compiler directive C_variant for this. Okay, yes, right. All right, so here when we're checking parameters, and by the way, all this code is going to be provided, exactly what you see here. So you can look through this, change it, modify it, do whatever the heck you want with it. This is just something I use to help me learn about classes that I intended on giving away to everybody. I didn't expect to give a 4DMethod meeting so quick on it, but anyway, that's what happened. It's not all fully implemented. There's certain parts I didn't implement. For example, the JavaScript date class stores date time values as a big integer, the number of milliseconds since the Unix epoch of January 1st, 1970. And any date before 1970 is a negative value, which is a lot of work to do manipulations on. So I didn't do that. I implemented my date 4D class to use a UTC, date timestamp value, and also to use the timestamp function, which supports milliseconds. So you can pass in values and include milliseconds if you want to. So anyway, here's where I'm checking the parameters. If I got one parameter, we got to look and see, did someone pass in a number? Oh, we did. Okay, we do that. Otherwise, it's something else. If it's the first one is a text or an alpha, then it's a date string or date timestamp. So now we have to go through and figure out what we're going to do with that. Okay, then down here we're assigning values to all the parameters that are coming in. We know they're all long in after the first few. And then we decide how we're going to do initialization if we've passed in initialization. So if we passed in current date time, it's going to use the timestamp function, which again gives you a date timestamp, UTC, GMT, Zulu time that includes milliseconds on the end of it. And that comes from the system clock. So that may be useful. And so here's the rest of the things. I won't go through all the details. Anyway, it comes down through here and it passes back a value. So here's a bunch of things. What I found useful in the method editor is you've got all of these functions and they all have to be in the date 4D class method. You can't put this stuff somewhere else. This is your only organizational tool, is everything's got to be in here. So what I found is if you come in here and you say collapse current level, boy, it gets you back to something you can use. So that you may find I use it all the time. I want to expand the current level. So click on one of these case statement lines or one of these function lines and collapse current level, and that gets you something where you can just see all your function names. Okay. All right, let's go back to here and let's bring up a test method. Open up test method. Okay, there we go. All right, so here's my test method, and I'm just doing very quick kind of unit testing here just to try out different things. And this is how I'm basically doing it. So we'll just real quick step through a couple of these so you can see some example code. So date.o is the date.o. Here's a assigned value to it. I took the approach of initially I started with just the UTC date timestamp with this thing here. That was my object, was just that. But then I found it was nice to have a bunch of individual pieces for something like this. The actual date in a 4D date format, the actual time in a string format, or the number of seconds in all these little pieces. And of course, local and UTC, different times. So the object now is more complex, and this lets you use dot notation. So if you get a 4D date class object back and you just want the hours from it, you can get those. Or if you just want to convert it into a time variable, you can say, give me the time seconds or the time string, and use the 4D time command and put it into that. So I found that useful. And so might be something to consider for some of your classes in the future, is to maybe add a bunch of extra stuff, so to speak, into the object. So you can use dot notation to access different pieces. So here's just some tests to assign, to a new object, all these different things, and using the assert command just to prove it. That's when the moon landing was on that day. And then, here's another thing, compatibility. The JavaScript date class has zero-based ranges for days and for months. So months aren't from 1 to 12. Months are from 0 to 11. And the same way for days. So that's pain to remember. It's zero based. So I decided we should have compatibility. Maybe somebody for some reason wanted to do it the JavaScript way, but I didn't want to do it that way. So I didn't make it zero based, but I've got a command that lets me turn on JavaScript compatibility. And that leads us to another little way of looking at things. Okay, so let's find this particular, I'm going to close this. Let's go find where this is at. If you don't know where it's at, you can say go to definition. That'll open up the class file and select in that class file.
That's nice.
Okay, so you're going to find that when you're doing things like, let's check on set month. All right, let's go to definition. Oh, didn't work. There's a reason for that. If you go to down here to set, I'll show you that in a minute. If you go down here to set date and you say go to definition, it jumps you to date. Okay. All right, so here is the compatibility function. And classes are, you can have storage for classes in storage, shared storage. So here's a way to assign properties, attributes to a class that is across, all processes, and it's stored in here. And so here's how you do it. So I'm checking to see, is CS date, is this thing defined yet? This particular, it's not. And if it is, then, create it, use it, assign the value to it. And so, again, it's in storage. So you got to say new shared object when you're creating these. So let's go back to the test method up here. And we come down to here. Okay, let's go in here and look at it. Okay, so, oh, wait a minute. Come back up out of there. Let's do this. Otherwise, it'll take too long to go into it. Okay, so when we come in here, if we look at CS date 4D, you get a whole bunch of things in here. And if you work with storage, you'll know about these locker IDs. So this, I'm just showing you that this is, how it's done. So anyway, you create your own attribute, and like I'm doing here, I'm setting an attribute, and then you can assign values to it. And then you can access those anywhere. So that's a way to assign data to your class that's kind of, hidden, obfuscated. So you've got your methods, like your function set date, set JS compatibility. You've got all these different methods, but you've also can put data in there too. And that data, it stays across all the classes. It doesn't stay with the actual object. It's not stored with $date_O. It's available to all the classes. So anyway, just wanted to point that out, that that's available if you if you need it. And in my case, I needed it. I needed to store this somewhere, so I'm storing it here. All right. So anyway, here's a bunch more examples of
Hey,
how.
Tim, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, please.
You said that the data that you store there is stored, is it just accessible to this class or to all other classes as well?
Well, if you specify cs.date4d.compatibility settings anywhere in your code, it's going to access it.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
That's how you access it is by using this. So it's not hidden from other classes, but it's a place where it's stored and kind of associated or tied to this.
So it's kind of like setting it in the constructor, be the same effect.
Yeah, it's just a place that properties are going to live. You put them there, and they're going to stay there until you quit your application. And they're in storage, so they're preemptive and all that kind of stuff, thread safe, etc. I'm not sure exactly what there probably is more use for this, and maybe there's a better way of doing this, but this is the way that examples that I found of how to use this. So
it's like the classes are almost like a special flavor of a shared object.
Yes, yeah. It's got a special area in storage.
Yeah.
And then you can access that area and do things with it. It's like they pre-declare an area saying, oh, you made your own class. Let me reserve a little area in storage for you in case you need it. Okay.
Cool. Another good tip.
Yeah. But again, just to clarify that, I'm sorry, your answer on whether like the data is available from one function to all the other functions across your classes.
Sure, it's available anywhere in this class method using this code. In other words, I can come over here and I can go to any method and I can say, I can put this in and I can say compatibility settings dot, and we got to find JS compatibility, okay? And I can say is enabled, okay? That's how you determine what's in there, and that's going to look for this value. You can call that from any method anywhere.
Okay.
In any other class.
Right. So what's the difference between this and storage, I'm wondering then?
None, other than I saw it in a blog post that, hey, by the way, if you got crap you want to store with a class, here's a place to put it. There may be other reasons and values and things coming in the future where there may be protections and errors and coming along. But as of right now, this is all I know.
I think the benefit is around modularization. So it's declaring that the date4d class owns this setting.
Right.
So when you're looking at the code, you're trying to figure out what is this thing. At least it gives you clues to where to look. So
this is true.
Compartmentalizing the code.
But there's no it's not going to protect Tony from screwing it up in some other area. If he's wanting protection, there's no protection right now.
Hopefully in the future.
That's assuming that's what you're looking for, right, Tony? Some way to protect.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm not necessarily looking for protection, but I'm just looking for scope and just trying to understand, is it just, like you said, kind of a logical compartmentalization to help you organize it, or is it actual, protection?
Hard to know exactly what, because like I said, this is all new to me, but you can get the value here and you can look at this particular, all right, I'll fix it. You can look at this particular thing and you can see, and of course you could even, if we were to come up here and change this to just CS, then you can see all kinds of things in here. So here's simple test, another class I made, here's date4d, and then here's some things. If you look here in simple test, it doesn't have, there's nothing else assigned to it, there's.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Yeah, that's it, okay, so, all right, so there's that. Now, so I could string along, instead of doing things this way, I could take this and put it up here. If I were to go into all of my functions And that's not a good one. That's a big one. Set year. There we go. If I were to come in here, and that's not a good one either, the long one, and assign $0, $0 colon equals this. If I were to do $0 colon equals this, then we're okay. Then it would work. Then this would work. But until you do that, you can't chain together a bunch of function calls. So I haven't done that because I didn't realize until this week that I could do that, and I had to do these things, so I didn't update it. So that's why I'm pointing it out to you. Okay, let me see what else I've got to tell you about. You guys can look at code. I don't need to go through all the different details of all this code. These are just methods that test things. Oh, set month. When I said go to definition, I get to find. And that's because it found set month in simple test. Simple test class has set month and set value. So and I think this should be fixed. So if your function name is used in multiple classes, it won't find it. Like I said, I think that's
a mistake.
I think that should be fixed.
That's a mistake.
Because if you go here to set date and say, okay, go to definition. Okay, I found that, you know. So anyway, like I said, this is like, it's new, guys. It's all new. You know, we don't know where this is going to all end up, you know. So just wanted to point that out, that you can use the same name. You can do a function overloading. That's what they call it. When you have a function name that is the same function name used in multiple places, but it does different things. 4D's classes implement and support function overloading, except for going to the definition, in which case it doesn't know how to handle function overloading. But when you execute the code, it does. Okay, talked about show definition. Oh, documentation. Let's look at documentation. So here's date 4D, okay, and documentation. Oh, we got some documentation. Let's take a look at the documentation. All right, here is documentation. This uses the Markdown language, the GitHub variant of Markdown, files ending in .md. And I've got a program called Typoria, which is a WYSIWYG type of editor for this. If you want to be hardcore, you can, you know, and even this is making it kind of pretty. Three asterisks means bold italic. But anyway, this all gets, and they've colorized it. So I normally don't go into this. I normally let it go this way. And so anyway, I encourage you to do this because then you can write your code, you can set different headings, you can have ordered lists, you can have footnotes, you can have links. So you see here, it automatically formats all this and you don't have to, you know, do anything special. If you want to make something bold, just highlight it and do Command B to bold it. And it's going to be putting those asterisks out there for you behind the scene. You can have links in here. You can have code areas. Now, no one so far has written a code interpreter or whatever it's called for the 4D language. If you were to specify this as JavaScript or as Python or some of the other supported language or C, it would automatically highlight and colorize and format the language. But so far, nobody has done one for 4D. So I specify as 4D language, but it just shows it as raw text. So just wanted to point that out. And hopefully in the future, someone like maybe Miyako will write a language parser that will get posted so that will be a supported language, just like all the other languages. And then we'll be able to see actual formatted code.
I feel like I've seen Miyako do something in his demos with, is it Atom, the Atom editor, where he's at least had some very basic code recognition of 4D code?
There's a way to do it. And if someone were to want to spend a little time, they could go read the specs and build the text files that define the 4D language and all the keywords and how they're all supposed to be displayed. and then you can add that support somewhere, and you get the proper formatting.
Yeah, Tom said as much in the chat as well. At least there's one for Adam.
Yeah, so you can embed images also in here. So here I've got an image embedded. I just took a screenshot of some code. And so that's nice for your documentation. Let me show you how you can do that. The images can be embedded this way. If I go here, and let's hide this, and I go here. Another little secret side thing. This is a .4D base package. They're supported in V18, even in R4. You can't make it with 4D. You have to make it yourself. So it normally makes you a folder that looks like this. But if you do the right things and know how to make a package, you can make a package, and then you can double click on this. You can assign it to an application. Anyway, I'm not sure if they're going to support that in the future or not, but it's there now. If you like having one thing as opposed to, well, I've got to open this thing up, and then I've got to open this thing up, and then I can double click this. So I got to make an alias of this out somewhere else. So when I double click on this, it'll open up the right thing. Anyway, just a little side note. In documentation, there's a folder here, and you've got one for classes, and you've got one for methods, okay? And you notice in classes, I've got a folder called images. And that was because I wanted to have this image kind of stored somewhere. It could have been stored right here in the same folder with classes, or you could even specify an actual path to somewhere on your hard drive, which you wouldn't want to do, because if you gave this class to someone, or you put it in a different 4D database, the path would probably be wrong. But anyway, just letting you know that you can embed images in here, which is nice. And you can also make tables too. This is nice to make tables. And I want to go up here and say, let's make a table. Let's insert a table, and we'll make it 3 by 4. Okay, now we got a table, and let's change it, or let's make it that big. Nice, very nice to fool with. Okay, and you can format this stuff, title, so that's all built in.
That's a good tip for Typora. I just downloaded it. It's free for anybody who's interested.
Yeah, and if you view the source, tables are, they look like this: vertical bars and dashes. That's how you do it with just raw text. But
who wants to do that?
Yeah, well, some people want to do that. I don't know. The other thing, you got themes. So, for example, this is the GitHub theme, which is what 4D uses. You've got, this thing, this is all CSS. There may be a way to make 4Ds if you want night mode, dark. You got that. So anyway, it's just nice if you want to kind of jazz up what you're doing. And again, 4Ds Explore supports all of this, embedded images and all. Okay, so they do a little bit of coloration here in 4D, not much, but a little bit. And so just want to put that out to you. And so anyway, so you see, you can make some really, really nice documentation.
Yeah. Documentation is good, everybody.
And as opposed to having, like initially in the class at the top, I had all of this. I had a gigantic bunch of documentation up here. Well, in my class constructor, I've got this, and here's the new comment. So you can always collapse your comments down now. So that's nice. So anyway, I wanted to just show off a little bit of documentation.
For another 2 minutes.
Pardon me? Okay. Let's see. Do I have anything else to comment on? I just want to just show you some of the basic things and get any questions or comments or feedback, and just show you what's possible. You can't do any of this with R3. R4 is where you get var. So if you want to use var, you got to get the R4 beta, and then you can use var. And then whenever you are creating things, like you've got the date dot, you see you've got only the things that are in my class. You don't have the stuff from the simple class. So that's useful. That's the big thing. And also, if you're using 4Ds, like use 4D dot folder, you know, if you have a variable that you want to declare like that, I'll do a quick one there. If you say folder, let's say var. Okay, if you do that, then when you create like a folder, you see, you only see the things you can do to a folder. So that's another reason to use var. If you just declare this as an object, let's do that. Object. Let's say var object. Okay. If you do that, now it knows it because I already put it in. Let's say folder 2. Nope, still knows it. Nope, it's showing a whole bunch of other stuff. See, it's showing all these different things. So once you specify it as a 40 folder, then it limits your selections. So 40 is going to be doing more and more of that stuff.
Yeah.
Add more of that to the language. So when you use your type ahead and the tab key, you're going to have less things show up. One thing that they haven't provided yet is a way to open documentation from here. There's no way to see the documentation from here. We need to have a command in the method menu to show documentation with a keyboard shortcut, so you can do like Command Option D or something. Now, if you want to go see the documentation, the only way to do it is to come searching for it over here and find it. Okay. You can right click on things and edit documentation, so you can always do that.
That's a good feature request.
Yeah, that is one. The other thing to be aware of is it makes documentation for every darn thing that you make. So every method you make, it'll make documentation for it if you go in there and fool around with it a little bit. So you got to be careful when you do that. Oh, the other thing is when you use a if you use a method like JS is enabled. If I go back here to test JS, my method name is JS compatibility. Okay. Down here, you notice it's going to show your syntax, and it'll automatically show syntax like this has got a Boolean. But if you declare things like, if I say C underscore text $1, save that. If I come back over here, see how it automatically picked up the word string there? Your compiler directives, it knows how to handle. It doesn't know how to handle var yet. So if you want that, you've got to say C underscore Boolean $0. If you do that, then when you come over here and type in your method, it knows about that. So see, they haven't got it finished yet. So var doesn't pick up automatic highlighting. You can also make your own words. So when you highlight over, when you do this, you can set that. So here, if I go into documentation and I edit this documentation, up here, this comment line at the top, class information, whatever you put right in here, whatever you type, that is what shows up when you hover over the method editor.
But not the markdown itself.
Not just that. That's all. So you can put a sentence or two. You can put whatever you want. When you down here, this is coming from looking at the compiler directives, not the vars yet, but the compiler directives. I assume the vars will come, but right now it's just compiler directives. So just another little tip about how, anyway, I'm loving this because you always wonder, okay, how many commands was that? Which one was the third one? Was it this or that? Well, now you'll be able to very quickly go in and have a hover that tells you the first parameter is, the date, the second one's the time, the second one's the number of months, et cetera, et cetera. And then you also have down here, it's going to show you, very quickly, even if you do nothing other than just declare your variables, you're going to see long int, text, date, time, etc. Okay, that's it, guys. That's my whole presentation. Just quick review of everything. I'll provide this to Brent, and he can post a link to it. You can download this and you can look at it, and you can play around with, all this stuff. There's a whole bunch of code to make this thing work like JavaScript works. I'm not sure this is actually useful unless you've got some JavaScript code that uses the date class that is doing some type of manipulations. They do things like when you can set the month. If you set the month to 15, it puts it 3 months into next year. It doesn't add 15 months. It says go into next year and then add 3 months. And anyway, the documentation for the date class gives you all the details about how it works. It's odd. And when you look at the code, you're going to say, gee whiz, there's a lot of code here. Why is there so much code to do all of this? And it's because JavaScript is a weird language, or date class is a very weird is a very weird thing here. So whenever you manipulate things, and so this has got the same functionality. So when you look at some of these things, you see that it's doing, some of these are simple to use, but some of them can get real complicated.
I think this would make a good addition to the 4D open source project on GitHub.
I mean, look, set full year, okay? Set full year, they have, you can pass in just the year, but you can also pass in a month and you also pass in a day if you want. So years required, month and day are optional. Now you have to do the work. Now you have to say, all right, let me get the date, okay? Then let me convert it. Let me set the year. Let me see if we got a month. If we do, then we've got to deal with setting a month, check if we're setting the day. If we've got the day, then we've got to do all this. So it ended up being, a lot of work sometimes because, and same for hour. You can set, you can pass in just certain parts. So there's a lot of code to make it follow the API. Some of it's easy, like this one, set milliseconds. Just call this function, set time components, pass in millisecond. And so this is a function that the class uses inside itself. You could use it outside the class if you want to, but I wrote it to let me manipulate different things. Set minutes does the same thing. You pass in all the little tidbits and then it goes and does all this math to make things happen. Okay.
It's been a whirlwind of very good tips.
Yeah, I do want to hold her up for too long. We'll try and get through this as quick as possible. There's a lot here. Again, source code is available to everybody.
Yeah.
So questions?
There's a question in the chat. Might be the best place to look at it, but it's from Eric. Can you use the type casting and function definitions for the MD file, for the markdown file? I think that's at the top where, the top of the markdown file where it's in the comment.
The type casting, I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, he put an example of it in there.
Oh, okay, let me bring up the chat as soon as I can find what the silly thing is.
Where,
here we go, I got it.
Yeah. If you can put the parameters, in
anything you type in that comment, any characters, they'll show it. You could just say, a comment. You could say that you could write 3 or 4 lines. So whatever you type in there, that it'll show you. It doesn't do any formatting; it just shows it to you. The area at the bottom, the area down here at the bottom of the method. Down here where it says JS compatibility is enabled, string Boolean, That you can't control. That comes from looking at the compiler directives.
That's probably the question then. Is can you control what what the parameters
You control the words
are
that
listed?
people see.
Yeah.
You control the
Yeah.
words they see. So you could type as much as you want up there. In my case, I just typed it returns Boolean because that's all it did.
Right. Yeah. No, that's really nice. I'm sure they'll come around and offer the same pop-up at the bottom of the method editor for var variables. I mean, it's just a matter that it's coming.
All work in process.
Yeah. We're just getting an early look at 19. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. There any other questions out there? I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen back again while.
Oh, and by the way, if you want to install this 4D class in another database, you just go into the class folder and copy that class, okay, and the documentation.
That is, again, super neat to be able to do that. It's literally just one. It can be, anyways, just one text file for what the class, all the functionality is.
If you got documentation, it's going to be two text files: a documentation file and the class file. And if you want to make a component, you can make a component, okay. And when you make a component, every class function is exposed. I'm assuming at some point they're going to have public-private keywords. So you can have a function where you can say this is a public function, this is a private function. So if you make a component with a class, there'll be a way that you won't expose every class function. You may have some internal ones like I'm using, But right now, I don't see there's those keywords. Haven't found those where you could make a class private. And that might help for like Tony's comment. Maybe he has some things that he wants to be private, that he only wants his classes to call themselves. He doesn't want these class functions to be called outside of the class. Inside the class, they know what they're doing. Outside the class, you can't call it. Right now, they haven't put that restriction on yet.
That's interesting. There's another question in the chat. How do you make a component from a class? And I think it's just you make the component itself would have to be project-based, right? Because classes are only available for project-based.
You simply create a project. You create a project. You put the class file in there and the documentation if you want, and you then use the build command to say build, and you say I want to build a component.
Right.
And it will build a component, and it'll make a .4dz file with the component in there compiled, and then you put that component in your components folder, and then your classes magically appear.
Yeah, and for many of us, that may be the quickest path forward. I know it is for me at the Art Institute. We're not ready to make the leap to going non-binary and switching the entire code base to project-based code. But what we can do is make project-style components, which can have their own class type approach to the code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in my case, I've got one project I'm working on right now that's going to be going to V18 binary mode. For various reasons, we can't go project mode. We want to, but it'd probably be R4 before we can go to project mode for V18. So we'll go binary, and that's a good step. So just move forward. If you want to go to 18, go to 18. There's a lot of great features in there, and I saw a little speed boost between 17 and 18, especially using 4D client over a WAN to 4D server. So that's kind of nice. And you've also got, more of the language, more commands in the language. But if you want to use classes, you got to be in project mode. So I won't be using project mode and classes and anything in production for a little while longer. Probably, maybe first of the year, probably we'll be able to switch to project mode for this one project. And then we'll start being able to use classes and making a real mess of everything.
Chip had a good question. So yeah, I mean, the class files can be, if you're not used to giant giant tons of code, a bit hard on the eyes. And, he said it's a lot of code stuffed into one 4D method for the class functions. Can the class function code be moved to separate 4D methods, even if that is just through function name, 4D method name parameters? I don't see any reason why not. I mean, it wouldn't be as
totally fine. You can call any method. You can call any method, any 4D command you want inside a class.
Yeah.
So if you want to have a giant case statement of all your functions, and every case statement for a function, you create another method that gets called. Okay, but that kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a class, Chip, because then if you want to move the class somewhere else, you got to move the class and all those other methods that you created with it.
Right. And for what it's worth, you could do that now with a shared object, just with shared formulas in the object, so that you're running the formula with parameters that do nothing but call method calls.
Yeah. So I would encourage using collapse current level to collapse, like I showed you, collapse down that class file, put all the code in there, and then just collapse them all down and only open the ones you care about.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
What you just said, if you really want to move your class potentially to other databases, then the right place is in a component.
Sure.
Yeah.
If it's only intended for the database you're in, then it's not a component, or it shouldn't be.
Well, but if everything the class needs is in one class method, one file, it's a hell of a lot of work to make a component out of that, when actually putting that class in another database is simply copying one file, the class file, to the other database. You've now installed it. Now, if there's other things other than the class file that you wanted to move over, maybe, some other things, methods or whatever, yes. But if everything was in the class file, making components seems like extra work to me.
Yeah. In the end, it just might be, whatever your favorite flavor is.
You can do it either way. You've got options and choices to do. But right now, I think that their initial idea was, we're going to have these class files, and it'll just be one file, and you make a class that does things, and then you just post, here's the class file, here's a documentation file, 2 text files, drop them in your database, and you're done.
Yeah. And as Eric has said, beating his table in the chat there, use classes and inherited classes to make things easier, so that
That's right. You can make this thing 4 or 5 levels deep, and you can really make something very powerful.
Yeah. Inheritance is going to be a big deal moving forward.
Yeah, that's something I have not explored at all, that I still need to learn about, is how to use inheritance to actually improve things, because first you've got to, you have to define your problem and split it up into a hierarchy, an inheritance hierarchy that makes sense, like a shape, a square, a rectangle, a polygon. You have to know how to break it into pieces. And if you don't do that right, you're not really gaining anything with inheritance. But if you can do it right, at each level, it does just what's necessary at each level and inherits as you go up and down the chain.
Yeah,
it can be very powerful. But sometimes defining the inheritance hierarchy can be challenging for real life things.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments, questions, chats?
Can't believe everybody stayed, still 46 participants. That's amazing. I figured people would drop out after a while saying, oh, I don't need to look at this stuff. I know all this. I know what's going on.
Oh, it's great to see all the participation, and thanks everybody for joining, and thanks Tim for again a very densely packed demo with terrific tips in it. I mean, it's just it's almost worth having a separate document just for all the specific tips that he dropped in the demo. So it's.
I thought about making slides, but then I said, I don't want to go to all that trouble. I'll just tell everybody all this stuff.
Yeah. Hope you're all taking notes.
More example code. That's how I learned 4D at the beginning, was people showing me examples, and I need to see a lot of examples. And if I write the examples myself, boy, I really get the most out of it. So I wrote quite a few hundred lines of code in this example, and I learned a lot. I learned what I could and couldn't do, and I had so many mistakes that I made along the way, and found things that I didn't know you were available just by actually doing a project. So that's also useful for me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Tim. So our next meeting, you can find the schedule at 4dmethod.com/schedule. We don't have anybody teed up for the next meeting on November 18th or for January 20th. If there's anything you'd like to show off, or maybe do some of your own experimentation with classes, I think this is going to be something we're going to be seeing a lot more of one way or another, and perhaps from you. You can pick one of those dates, or let me know another date that would work better. This is our group. We make the schedule. Doesn't matter. These are just date suggestions. Yeah, so reach out to me at 4DMethod, and we'll get you on the schedule. If there's any other questions or comments or feedback, now's a good time to blurt it out and let us know what's going on. But otherwise, thank you to our Patreon supporters and all of you out there helping to make this group possible, and offering your time and code examples. Again, thanks, Tim, for another demo number 3, and looking forward to the next ones. Definitely learned a few things, and not all of us have the time to go in and really sink our teeth into these features right when they're coming out. But it's a great time to do that now that that way you can really understand the development as it happens, and maybe even ask 4D for certain features like what Tim has said about the not the autocomplete, but the pop-up at the bottom of the meth editor. It'd be nice if that worked with var as well. So anyways, thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and we'll hope to see you next time at 4DMethod. Again, give me a shout with any other ideas. Always open.
Thank you, Brent.
Yep.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jim.
Thank you, Jim,
very
for
much.
all the support at 4D and the news that you guys offer. And we'll see you next time.
My pleasure. Yep. See you next time.
Good
Thanks,
job.
Brett.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.